Welcome back to our series of lectures on ethics. Yesterday we have dealt, rather the last class we have dealt with why volunteer. Now we move forward in the process and now let us discuss what are the essential qualities that a volunteer must cultivate and what are we have touched upon all these points which you are going to make, which I am going to make, but nevertheless the justifications, the examples may be slightly different. So, it cannot be quite different from why volunteer, and it is all linked with the characteristics of a volunteer. So, if you want to become a volunteer, all of us must volunteer for something or other, and for various reasons which you have discussed yesterday in the last class. Now, let us come to what makes you a good volunteer, or what are the characteristics that a volunteer must cultivate. Please remember, there is a vital point which I have made in this PPT, that volunteers are not born, they cultivate volunteerism. That is very important. You know, in the animal world also, sometimes we see volunteerism, very rarely, but we also see volunteerism in the animal world. Recently there was a picture which became very viral, where in the jungle a huge elephant is providing shade to a lion cub. A lioness and her kids were travelling together with the elephant in search of water, and while they were travelling, the elephant kept pace with the lions and walked, and his shadow fell upon the lion cubs. So, you see, this is a kind of volunteerism. The elephant is providing shade to the lion kids, lion cubs, but these are rare events in the nature. These are rare events in the nature. So, if man is basically an animal, most of us may agree on this, some of you may not agree, does not matter. You have to grow to be a volunteer. It is not necessarily an inborn quality. Now, even if you have some inborn qualities, let us presuppose that you are an inborn volunteer, even then, you know, if you become conscious of what will make you a good volunteer, that is helpful. You know, there are many born singers, all right, born singers are there, but if they take training, they still become better singers. Many singers may not have any classical base, does not matter, but even then, when they become Bollywood singers and all that, they have to learn many things, like throw of the voice, like how to sing in a mic, how to sing in a studio, how to sing in a public place, in a stadium. All these requires fine tunings, and you have to learn those things. So, similarly, even if you are a born volunteer, then you still require to become conscious. You have to become conscious what are the characteristics that you need. Sometimes you need training. How? Because suppose I decide to volunteer my services in a hospital, I will require some training. So, that is very important. So, we will in this class discuss what are the qualities that makes you a good volunteer, or as a volunteer that you must cultivate, practice. We have already said that the job of a volunteer is stimulating, challenging, incredibly rewarding. I did not explain this to you, but I must tell you that even if it is stimulating for you, there are many, they are so lethargic, they will not allow any stimulation to happen with them. They refuse, they do not budge from their laziness, and even if the job is quite stimulating, it gives you challenge, you must be prepared to accept the challenge and respond to the challenge. You see, recently the COVID pandemics passed, And how many people responded, as we have discussed yesterday in the last class. Without this response, possibly the world would not have been as it is today. Many more people would have died, but it did not happen. It could be prevented in many ways. How? Because people came forward. It was stimulating for them. So, there are people who are so asleep inside their heart, they refuse to be stimulated. So, in that case, it is very difficult to arouse them. So, your eyes and ears must be open and you must feel for others. That is very important. It is a challenge, which is a challenge you have to take up. Altruism helps without any expectation. That is a very important thing. I have already told you several times, though we have not discussed the philosophical foundation or the moral and religious foundation of volunteerism. I have told you time and again that it is ingredient, it is very much there in all religion, in all philosophies. And you have to realize that it is just not Vasudhaivam Kutumbakam is a sentence. You have to realize your interconnectedness with others. You have to understand that you are interconnected, you are connected with others. So, I was giving you the example of how the tiger is connected with you, with your welfare also. So, that is how this interconnection has to be understood. Similarly, this altruism, which is the philosophical foundation, has to be understood, that it is without expectation. You volunteer for something without any expectation. The only expectation which you may not have, which will definitely come to you, is self-satisfaction. That is the reward. Volunteerism is its own reward. You need not search for a reward outside. So, it will give you satisfaction and it will not give you any monetary benefit. It might give you in the long run, people will recognize, some award may come, you may get a job in that direction, as we have discussed yesterday. But all that is not expected. If it happens, well and good. So, this desire to do something without any expectation is a great thing. And if you are not prepared to accept that philosophy in your mind, that yes, I will work without benefit, I will do it for self-satisfaction, I will do it for good of others, I will do for good of the world, good of the mankind. If that is not your attitude, you cannot be a great volunteer. It is very difficult for you to volunteer for anything. So, that is why a volunteer must believe in this basic fundamental principle that I will help without any expectation. So, it is an attitude which you must cultivate. Altruists are happy, I need not explain it further. Empathy and compassion are commonly identified as personality traits of volunteers. I have already explained to you what is empathy. Compassion, I am dead sure you understand, feeling for others. Empathy is feeling in the same manner as others. So, we discussed how Ramakrishna Paramahansa got full symbol of the slap on the child's cheek. His cheek also reflected the same reaction as that of the child. So, that is feeling as others. So, it is something more than sympathy, let me repeat. So, this empathetic attitude is not an easy thing to practice. Empathy and compassion, compassion. Sometimes you may not be able to help, but you must have compassion. That is very important. You must have heard about Lord Buddha's story, that a mother lost her kid and Buddha was happening to be in that village. So, he rushed with the dead body of his son to Lord Buddha and said that you are godlike, people say you are spiritually powerful, can you bring back my child? So, Buddha says, bring a handful of grain, mustard seeds from a family where nobody has died ever. So, the lady moved from house to house and asked, can I have a handful of seeds? Can I have a handful of these mustard seeds from you, provided nobody has died in your family ever. Now, after moving around for a few minutes, the lady realized that it is not possible to find anybody where death has not occurred. Now, when he comes back to Buddha and tells him that, with great compassion, Lord Buddha explains to her how death is part of life. No, Buddha is known as the very God of compassion. We also call in Odisha Lord Jagannath Karunakara. So, compassion is that. So, if Karuna also is associated with the other word Karunya, that is your sorrow. So, when you get real compassion, your sorrow goes away. Your sorrow goes away. That is very important. It is a very strong feeling of empathy, it is a very strong feeling of understanding somebody's sorrows and sympathizing with him, empathizing with him or her, so that his pain, his sorrow is released and it is reduced substantially. That is why you must develop that habit of understanding the sorrow of others. You must understand the difficulties of others. Then only you can be a great volunteer. One cannot be a volunteer just mechanically. It cannot be a mechanical thing. It has to come from within. And how it will come from within? Unless you develop that sensibility, sensitiveness to understand others, to understand the sorrow of others. That is very important. Instead of being born as a volunteer, human beings grow into volunteerism. If you recall the very first lecture of Professor Ashok Das, when he introduced this to you, he said that ethics is a dynamic thing. It changes with time. He gave you various examples. I am recalling one of the examples. That example is that when man was living in the jungles, he was not living in families, and then he started living after building homes and staying in villages. Then we have come across and we have come to other things. We have built cities, we have built kingdoms. Now we have democracy and all that. Now, do you think that ethics was same? No, it is not same. But why ethics arose? Every time ethics arose because man and woman live together. They have been together, moving together, living together. Man is a social animal. If you do not want to use the word being, better you use, no objection. Man is a social animal. And the minute you recognize that human beings are social, then you recognize that they also recognize ethics. So, suppose when people were living in the villages, agriculture was the mainstay of occupation, everybody was connected with agriculture, then what happens? Joint families become common. Joint families become common. And in the joint family, respect for the elder is supreme. Now, suppose today we are in a service sector, roughly in India about 45% of the people today are not in agriculture. Still large number of people are associated with agriculture, but quite a large number of people are now in service sector. Service sectors means they are engineers, they are doctors, they are nurses, and quite a large number of them are working in IT field. Now, when a large number of people are working in IT sector, service sector and others, they are bound to move out from their villages and go and work in Bangalore or Hyderabad or even in United States of America. Now, do you think that ethics will remain constant? It cannot remain constant. It cannot remain constant. So, if your son or elder brother is working in Bangalore, he cannot leave his job and come and stay with your father for various reasons. Foremost reason is that he will not have enough income to support himself. His children will be going into school in Bangalore, is it not? His wife may be also working. If you are working in Bangalore, See, he cannot come for various reasons. So, when they were living in joint family, father, mother, son, sons, daughters, sisters, everybody was living together. In the same manner, he cannot come back to his village. If his father is ill, he will get time and try to come and help. But that does not mean that he will not have concern for his father. Is it not? So, if he is the lone son, then he may find an old age home for his father, take him to Bangalore if it is possible, and try to take care of him. The essential that we want to take care of the aged remains, but the methods of taking care will be different, has to be different. It cannot remain the same way as it was 100 years ago. Ethics is a growing thing, it changes with time. So, what happens is that as the situation changes, we also grow in everything. Similarly, when we are talking of volunteerism, volunteerism is a growing thing. People did not understand volunteerism as they understand today 100 years back, and definitely what they understood by volunteerism 100 years back, they did not understand it 2000 years back, because things have changed. There was a time when we are not conscious of environment, when we are not conscious of environment. You see, as a small child, when I was 4 years old, 3 years old, I was in Bolangir, and my mother cooked rice and other things with sawdust. Imagine how many trees were being cut in Bolangir, how many sawmills were there, how much sawdust was coming out of the sawmill, and how it could be used as a medium of cooking. Today we have realized that by cutting trees, we are endangering ourselves. So, the forest is not in danger, we are also in greater danger. That is what I have been trying to tell you yesterday. So, the consciousness, volunteerism regarding protection of trees comes out of our indiscriminate cutting of trees, is it not? So, that is very important. We have to grow, change ourselves, change the concept of volunteerism as time changes. It is a dynamic concept, it is not something which is static. When nuclear force had not come, there was no consciousness about nuclear force. Naturally, there is a consciousness today. So, also with IT sector and so many other things. So, that is very important, that human beings must grow into volunteerism. Passion for the targeted voluntary sector. I have said that many volunteers are required to work, or it is better to work in for a targeted group. So, what happens? In a targeted group, I am working for a targeted group. Suppose I am working for protection of forest, I am working for plantation of trees, I am working for transgenders. I have to choose one group. Then what happens is that my work will have some impact, it will have some results, it will have some effects. Today I go to a forest and plant a tree and come back. Tomorrow I go to teach slum children, I do not go day after tomorrow. Will the slum children read anything, learn anything? So, I have to choose a targeted group. I have planted a tree, come back from the forest, I do not know whether it is alive or dead. I have not taken care how it gets water or not. So, not only it has to be sustained effort, time and again you have to sustain the effort, but also work in a targeted group. So, you have to choose what can be the target group, that is what is there. A good volunteer works for a targeted goal, a targeted group, or he has a clear cut objective. Empathetic nature is desirable, this is repeated, I need not explain it further. A willingness to engage in lifelong learning. You see, lifelong learning. If you stop being a student at any point of your life, you stop growing. If you do not learn, if you refuse to learn, think of your father, mother, grandfather and others. They have to learn, it may be a little difficult for him, but they have to learn how to use a WhatsApp. If they have learned how to use a telephone, when the next generation mobile phones come, they have to learn how to use a smartphone. They may not go to a school or a college to get a degree. That is not what I mean by learning. Lifelong learning means that as you grow older, as you walk on the path of time, many things come into life and you have to learn it. You have to know it. You do not have a micro oven, you have purchased a micro oven. Then you must know how to use a micro oven. You have been using gas so far. Now you have to use a micro oven. You must learn how to use a micro oven. Suppose if you do not read the manual, you put a steel vessel inside the micro oven, then what happens? There is a fire, there can be an explosion, there can be serious consequences. Similarly, suppose as a IT student, you have, say those who passed IT say 20 years ago, new softwares come. If they do not learn new softwares, then they cannot do good work. So, volunteer is a lifelong learning person. When he does volunteering work, he finds out many new things he may not have understood earlier. So, volunteerism is an opportunity for lifelong learning, and for that, to be a good volunteer, you must have that attitude of lifelong learning. There was a very recently a case in Gujarat High Court or some other High Court, I do not recall exactly, but there was a case regarding the rights of transgender to get married. So, the judge was very honest and he said in the open court, I have not understood what is transgender, what are their problems. So, I will take up this case, but not today. I will, when it was allotted to him and all that by the Chief Justice, and when it came that very day before him, he was very polite and said, I do not understand transgender, all the biological implications of transgender, who is a transgender and all that, and what will be the effect of marriage and all that. So, he said, give me some time, I will take up this case, I will listen to your argument for and against and all that after a few days. What is he saying? He is a judge of the High Court, a very learned man, otherwise you cannot reach that position. But sometime a situation comes, even for a learned man, to study further. Nobody knows everything, nobody knows everything, and it is necessary for us to know new things as and when opportunity comes or as and when situation demands. So, lifelong learning is a trait which is common for everybody, but more required for a volunteer. Capacity and skill for conflict resolution. You know, a volunteer is normally has leadership quality and he is people have respect for him in this society. So, what happens is that every time you go for a volunteering cause for volunteerism, there are people who may oppose that cause, Now, we have always the question of sustainable development, to that we will come at the end, sustainable development. But let me give you an example. Now, there was Vedanta was trying to establish a factory at Niyamgiri, and you know, many people opposed that cause. They said, we will not allow you to establish this factory. Many volunteers came, joined with the tribal population and said, we will protect you, we will ensure that no factory comes up at Niyamgiri. Now, there were people also within that, in that village and all that, who felt that if the factory is established, we will get employment. A very good example will be your POSCO in Jagat Singhpur district. Some 20 years back, some 16 years back, when POSCO was to be placed within the Jagat Singhpur district, there was tremendous opposition from the local people and it could not be established. And now there is a proposal again to establish another steel plant by some other person, the Tata Group and others, and now the villages are divided. The most important village is that Dhinkia village, and where one group of people, quite a large number of the people, villagers, feel that the steel plant should come up in their village so that development takes place, rapid development takes place. There are few others who oppose it. Of course, there are politicians involved everywhere, not only in our country, in other countries also. Politicians get involved. You know, Mamata Banerjee came to power on that basis. When this nano car factory was to be established in West Bengal and people opposed the establishment of that factory, and Mamata joined with them, and the CPM government was thrown out and Mamata Banerjee came to power. Now that factory went over to Sanand in Gujarat. It did not happen in Bengal. Now when some situation comes, when you are engaged in volunteerism, conflict resolution automatically comes in. Conflict resolution automatically comes in. Not in every field, blood donations may not involve conflict resolution, but many a time you get attached with a cause which is very dear to the society and the opinion is divided. In that case, you have to understand how to resolve the conflict because you are respected. So, you have to yourself think what is this point of view, what is the opposing point of view, and then decide for yourself. Please remember, in these cases there is not always right and wrong. Sometimes there are causes which are right, there are causes from other point of view wrong, but then you have to resolve the conflict and move forward. And how do you do that? So, if you are a good volunteer, you will understand the nuances of for and against. So, you should be non-judgmental essentially. Never say this fellow is bad, never sit on judgment always. It is not correct because there are merits and demerits too. Ethics is basically the science of right and wrong, and it has to be debated, it has to be decided for yourself. What is right you have to decide, what is wrong you have to decide. Somebody else may think you are not correct, he is correct. So, that is why it is necessary to develop a power of judgment. A person who is a volunteer is normally not judgmental. He will not say you are a good man, you are a bad man. You will try to understand both the point of view. Clarity in thought and expression. If you do not express yourself clearly, then the people whom you are trying to serve will not work. Suppose you are working as a volunteer in health section. Now you have gone to a village to persuade people to take, say, vaccine for COVID. You have gone there. Then you have to tell the people that it has no reaction, that nothing harm will happen and all that. Unless you are able to clear their doubts, unless you are able to tell them clearly, convince them, you cannot get that thing done easily. Do you understand? There are many tribes in remote Raigada where the sub-collectors and revenue officers, health officials of that district took months together to go to the villages and convince them. There are still people, even in developed countries like America, who have not been convinced that it is necessary to take the injection. Now, how are we explaining to these people all over America? We are trying to tell them that this is not going to harm you. You might still get COVID, but you will not die out of it. It will not be that virulent, it will be mild. So, we are required to explain to people when you are volunteering. So, whatever cause we are taking up, we have to understand the cause very clearly. That is why knowledge base is required. Volunteerism also requires a knowledge base. So, that is why clarity in thought and expression is required. Patience, a proactive nature, a sense of commitment and reliability. If you are a reliable person, if the people thinks that you are a liar, you have come today, you will vanish tomorrow, you lack sincerity and you lack patience, then you cannot do volunteerism. Patience is the key word. Now, if you are trying to change the attitude of the people, if you are trying to grow forest, it all takes time. It does not happen overnight. It cannot happen overnight. So, if you lose heart, if you lose patience, then you cannot reach your goal. So, normally a volunteer is a patient person. He is proactive in nature, he goes and acts. The last two requirements are no less: teamwork and shared vision. Teamwork. You cannot as an individual change the world. Archimedes have said that give me a stick, I will roll the earth. It is said, it is all right. Scientifically it may be true. If you get a place outside the space and you get a long enough stick, you can roll the sun or the earth also, possibly. But that is not the sense in which he said. That is not the sense. Now, let us not go into what Archimedes said, let us not get into philosophy. We wanted to avoid serious philosophy right from the beginning. Now, what happens is that unless a group of people work, a team works, one person cannot be very effective. There are beautiful examples of one man who have done marvelous things. There are beautiful examples, I am not denying that. But suppose you say we want to teach children who are not going to school. As a one person you can do that, you will be able to teach 5 fellows, 20 fellows and all that. But if others join, you may not be able to teach mathematics, you may be able to teach only English. So, you have to get your friend who is in mathematics, who can teach mathematics, is it not? So, teamwork is necessary. And then suppose you have lot of ego, you are not capable of working with others, then how can you do change? A volunteer is a team fellow. He is able to work with others. He is friendly, he may not be your friend, but he has to be friendly aptitude. So, that is what is needed, and a shared vision. What is shared vision? If you are going and teaching children, you have the vision of universal education for India. You are going and teaching adults who do not know how to read and write. What have you? You have a shared vision of making India completely educated. It's a shared vision of making people free from polio. How is that possible? So, if you are volunteered, you have a nursing degree, or you have learnt how to give an injection or how to give a polio drop, you move from village to village, finding out kids, giving them polio drops and all that. Now, what is? You have a vision. That vision is that world must be free from polio. You know, in difficult terrains of Pakistan and Afghanistan, absolutely rural areas, desert areas, people have died trying to persuade people to take polio drops. But they have that vision. They know that these tribes can be very militant, violent. In spite of that, they have risked their lives. Many health workers of Pakistan have proven that how they have a shared vision, how they are committed and what are they doing. You know, that is how change comes. You have to have a shared vision. The last thing is that being humble, polite, non-interfering and respectful of nature. If you do not respect others, if you are not humble, if you are an arrogant fellow, if you start arguing on every issue, if you throw your weight and all that, then people will not trust you. Nobody will come forward to take your help. You have to be a simple man, you have to be a humble person, you have to respect others, then only you can win the confidence of others. Without winning the confidence of others, it is absolutely difficult to do volunteerism, it is difficult to be a volunteer. Thank you.